Welcome to our Play Well podcast series. My name is Marguerite Hunter-Blair and I am Chief Executive of Play Scotland, the national organisation for play. Today, we will look at play and autism. To explore this, we will be hearing from Dr. Robert Grant. Dr. Grant is a licensed professional counsellor, a national certified counsellor and registered play therapist supervisor. He is the creator of Aut Play Therapy, which is an integrative family play therapy approach. He is also currently serving as the chair on the board of directors for the Association for Play Therapy. Here is our Learning and Development Officer, Jenny Lester, catching up with Dr. Grant.
Hi, Dr. Grant. Thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast.
Hi, Jenny. Well, thanks for inviting me.
We know there's lots of misconceptions around autistic children in regards to play. So my first question is, do autistic children tend to play differently from neurotypical children?
Well, that's a great question. And it's also one I love talking about. Let me start actually with a little bit of history on this, because I think that helps answer the question in our current. So historically, the view that was put forth pretty predominantly was that autistic children didn't play and thus didn't understand play. And so to work with them in a therapy or in any kind of way that involved play, which was what we would normally do with kids, right? We wouldn't do with autistic kids because they don't play, they don't get it. This was wrong, of course. It was wrong and unfortunately really created probably years of kids, autistic kids, not getting the best approach that they could get, which was a play-based approach. It was a huge miss, but a lot of people then heard that and took that idea on and ran with it. And it's taken quite a while to get that turned around. I think it's much better currently. I feel like I rarely run into someone with that idea across disciplines, across professions. Thank goodness, because it's incredible how much of a miss that has been in working with and helping autistic kids. So to answer your question, yes, they do. Autistic kids play. They've always played. And they may play exactly like an adult thinks play should look like, or what an adult has had experience with neurotypical play or whatever. Or they may play in other ways. They may play in ways that really feel good to them. And that's okay. The importance in all this is, number one, knowing they do play, and two, valuing their play preferences and interests. For example, you may have an autistic child who really does like solitary play, like they enjoy doing things on their own. That isn't a problem. That doesn't mean they don't know how to play or that play is wrong. Or they may like doing a lot of organization in their play. They may like lining things up or structuring things. And they are getting the same play benefits out of that a neurotypical child is getting out of a pretend play that they do. This has really been about the adult misjudging the autistic child's play, not the autistic child is playing wrong.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it's so important that as practitioners and as parents, we're meeting the child where they are. You know, in Scotland, we have this framework that's called Getting It Right for Every Child. And it's about that sort of child-centered approach and making sure that, you know, we're treating each child as an individual. And I think that's so important.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny to me because, you know, it's embedded in this concept of ableism. And it's interesting because, I mean, I've done therapy with hundreds of autistic children, and just all the tenets of play therapy apply to them just like it does any neurotypical child. I mean, it's all right there the same, engaging with them, valuing their play, letting them lead, not placing judgments on it. Play is their natural language, just like it is all kids. And that's just the truth of it. The problem is that we in our systems didn't recognize that for so long. And again, that was just a big miss on our part. But yeah, there's nothing different from an autistic neurodivergent child to a neurotypical child in regard to plays the natural language. Play preferences should be used and recognized, and within this play provides the opportunity for all kinds of growth and healing and working on all kinds of needs. That's all the same for an autistic or neurodivergent child, just like it is for a neurotypical child.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's really fantastic. And I think that, you spoke a bit about the history of where some barriers have come from in recognizing play in autistic children, but are there other barriers or challenges that parents and practitioners might face when extending or supporting play for autistic children?
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest things is just learning about neurodivergent children. I mean, as the term applies, they're diverging from what might be considered the standard, typical norm in a particular society, right? So it's understanding that you're going to see different looks and presentations and ways of doing things. And it's for us, the parent, us, the professional, it's about us not judging that as wrong because it's different, but learning that, oh, this is how they do things and this is okay. And let me join them in their world and how they do things. And then a lot of wonderful things can happen, great relationship development, great work on possible needs or issues that are occurring that you want to work on. So I don't think you have to really think about what's different as much as valuing the differences and not having this set expectation about what you're going to see. You kind of throwing those things out the door is really the best preparation for being the parent or the professional, right? Mm-hmm. And then it's okay. You don't have to worry about what you're going to see because you're okay with what you see. And that it's how this child navigates, it's how they express. And they can do that in their unique individual neurodivergent way. And when you value and support that, it actually contributes quite a lot to the self-worth of that child. They feel that value versus the devaluing of them. And so that's just another extra bonus here, just building up that self-esteem and that self-identity when you accept them as they are and their likes and preferences and interests, instead of coming along and telling them, well, you're wrong for doing it this way and you should be doing it this way.
No, definitely. And I think children pick up on so much more than we think they would, even if you're even frustrated but you don't voice it. I think they can 100% tell. And it is just about sort of valuing autistic children for what they like, what they want to do, not expecting them to be the same, but not expecting them to be different, just coming to them, expecting them. And that's
yes.
So I was just wondering if you had any sort of top tips on how to support or extend play with autistic children.
Yeah. I always start with, we have actually, we work out of this neurodiversity affirming philosophy in our play therapy and in alt play therapy. And so we have these neurodiversity affirming constructs, and that kind of guides. That would be like your top list, that kind of guides. And those can apply to parents or professionals. It doesn't matter. It's good for both. And they're really things like, first of all, valuing and accepting the child's play preferences and interest. And I have kids who come in, and neurodivergent kids who do have strong play preferences and interests. They may just want to do a lot of movement play. They may want to bounce and hop and climb and jump and balance and roll, and they're not interested in any pretend play, or they're not interested in any technology play. And then I may have a neurodivergent child come in who is really into constructive play. That's their big play preference. They want to build things with Legos. They want to build things with bricks. They want to construct things, and they're not interested in any other type of play. Or they come in and they're really interested in technology play or pretend play, or maybe one or two of these. The main thing is that that's okay. I'm looking for what are their play interests and preference. And then I am communicating, it's okay that you have this play interest and preference. I'm going to join you in this. And then in the therapy side of things, if there's a specific therapy need or goal, I'm going to try to use that play preference to work on that therapy need or therapy goal. And then it's not getting too hung up. This would be the other thing that we talk about, not getting too hung up on these sort of expectations that kind of get created society-wise that really don't mean anything. Like, he needs to learn how to do this type of play. Well, why? Really, why?
Yeah.
I mean, it probably just seems that way until you start thinking about it more deeply. And then it's like, well, yeah, why does he really need to learn how to do this type of play? And you just stop and catching yourself. And if you find yourself in this place where you're like, well, I think we should be doing this, or the child should be doing that, just take a moment, go away, be by yourself and reflect on, where am I getting that thought from? Where is it coming from? What's driving that? Why do I believe that? To make sure that it's not sort of just kind of like a load of ableist conditioning. Because the last thing we want is making children feel like who they are isn't okay. And so we don't want to be coming in and being like, you're wrong to do this, and you need to do this to be right. And then that devalues who they are. Always give kids a voice, just try to engage with them, listen to them, even when they're communicating to you in ways other than verbal. Just really try to pay attention and listen. I think that's so important. That's one of the things we do a lot in our neurodiversity affirming constructs. Always assume competence, just because this child may not be navigating the way you're used to seeing a child navigate doesn't mean that they're incompetent, doesn't mean they don't understand, doesn't mean that they're not thinking through things, playing in a certain way. I've had a lot of actually had a lot of autistic adults tell me that as children, they mainly just lined up toys. And they have described to me how they were full on doing pretend play when they were lining up those toys. It was pretend play for them. They were pretending in their mind different things, but what you could see as the observing adult was just the lining up of toys. And so the observing adult completely missed that they were actually doing pretend play, because the observing adult is like, well, in my mind, pretend play has to be that you take this thing that's not a person, and now you tell me it's a person, and you're pretending it's doing something. And if I don't see that from you, then you're not doing pretend play. That's just a good example of where, we get it wrong when we start placing our interpretations on their world. And so we also really try to make sure we avoid that when we're in this play process with these kids. So a lot of it, you mentioned child-centered play therapy, Jenny. A lot of it is taking those philosophies and applying them to our autistic and neurodivergent kids. They deserve those child-centered tenets of acceptance and unconditional regard and empathy, just like all kids. And that is a big piece right there you could just bring into your play with neurodivergent kids.
Definitely. And I think it's so interesting, all of the challenges and all of the tips for how to do it better. they work for neurotypical children as well. Because if a neurotypical child is doing pretend play, and even if you as an adult can see and recognize it as that, if you then try and engage with it, you might completely have the wrong end of the stick about what they're actually doing. You know, there's been so many times, you know, a child's playing with a car and they're smashing them into each other, and you're like, oh, like who's winning? And they're like, what are you talking about? That's not what's going on at all, you know, like,
Yeah.
and it's just like, really, it's the child that knows what's happening, and you have to trust them to know what they're doing. And I think that is, again, about assuming competence. And it can be so hard as an adult to like step back and just let them do it, especially if it looks like they're struggling with it. But that's the whole point sometimes, is like letting them struggle through it and get to where they want to be at the end of it. For me, I've always kind of thought that in terms of accessibility and inclusion isn't just good for children, disabled children, it's not just good for autistic children. When you make things accessible, when you make things inclusive, it benefits everyone, because those are the same principles that everyone would like to be treated with.
Absolutely. And I mean, that is the concept of neurodiversity. For anybody who's listening and wondering, is neurodiversity means the diversity of all humans. So, you know, like in my work and in our clinic, a neurodiversity affirming approach is taken for all kids, because, you know, we kind of value all neurotypes, right? Wherever you're coming from with how your brain works is okay, you know, and we value that. And that's really what neurodiversity means. So you're right. It applies, the principles apply to all kids, regardless of neurotypical or neurodivergent. But you did make me think of something I think is important. I think a lot of, especially parents, get concerned with the interaction. Like, I think when they think of having a playtime with their child, or they see kids having play dates, right? They get concerned with their autistic child because they feel like they're not seeing this level or type of interaction that they think is important. And that's something that parents get concerned about. And I understand that. And I think it's important to mention, when you put these affirming principles in your playtime, when you sit down with that child who maybe doesn't interact a lot, right? But you start to have these playtimes with them that follow these affirming principles, that follow these child-led principles, you will see the relationship increase and start to develop more. And you will see, as a parent or a therapist, you will see more interaction. You'll see more natural interaction that happens at a level that the child is comfortable with. And you'll see this more kind of interactive playtime manifest. And what's so great about it is it's manifesting not because it's being forced, it's manifesting because the child has actually gotten to that place where they're comfortable, you know, interacting in the relationship in this way, which is wonderful, because that's just helping them. It's helping the parent. It's a nice gain for everybody that's done in a really respectful and valuing way.
No, definitely. It is just about like that sort of comfort level and ensuring that children are leading what's going on. And when they do that, they make progress that you could never have forced them to make, no matter what you do. Well, that's so fantastic. And, you know, I really enjoyed your YouTube channel as well. That's where I found you to come onto the podcast. So I thought those videos were so helpful, because they were just little snippets of like ideas of what to do, rather than, you know, anything too complicated. It was just like, well, here's 3 things you can try and see if they work. And if they don't, that's okay. But I think that's so useful, those sorts of little tools like that.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And we tried to keep posting things on the YouTube channel, so keep coming back and visiting. Yeah, lots of ideas in there. And I think that that is part of the process, right? Is you just keep kind of reaching out through this natural language of play. And if you don't know, you know, you find where is the child's play preferences and interests, and you move forward that, even if it's something more directive. That's okay if that's on their terms and it's where they're coming from.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you for joining us on this podcast. Next time, we will be looking at risky play. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your preferred app and join the conversation by using the hashtag PlayWellPodcast. And find out more about Play Scotland by following us on Twitter @Play Scotland and visit our website playscotland.org.